here with a video introduction for a new educational series I'm creating called How to Sell in Whole Foods Markets. If you have an idea for a new brand of salsa, a new beverage, or anything else that you want to sell in Whole Foods Markets, this training series is a good place to start. The series is broken down into chapters, all of which are forthcoming and will be available on this channel as they are completed, so you might want to hit the subscribe button below. So let's get to it. This video is going to be an introduction to the series, and we'll tackle the first thing you really need to find out before launching a brand. Why are you doing this? Whenever I consult for people in the natural products industry, I always ask them this question. The reasons fall under the old saying, begin with the end in mind. The saying is extremely fitting to the scenarios we're going to discuss because a wrong move in this business is costly. If you go through the exercise, you'll have a much clearer understanding of what it will take to get to retirement on the beach. There are many reasons people start businesses, and usually they fall under the following categories or some mix of them. I think it's important to note here that this training is not about the psychological paradigms. What we need to determine is what kind of business model you will need going forward. Money is obviously the most common choice. However, the real choice here is how much is enough. If you are just looking to supplement an existing income or just want a small business you can manage yourself, then your definition of monetary success will be much lower. If you're after exposure, either to gain credibility or support some other venture, then the level of exposure you require will determine your business model. If you're creating a new flavor for an existing brand, also called line extension, then the road will be very different for you as well. Whatever your reason, it all boils down to this. For our purposes, there are basically 4 attributes to choose from. Your decisions on what attributes to apply to your business model will lead to a completed matrix, which we will go over in a bit. On the top layer, the question is, am I going to launch a national or regional brand? At the bottom, am I using the brand as a marketing tool or a standalone profit center, or both? For now, let's look at some information that should help you choose your answer to the first question. Am I going to launch a national or regional brand? At first, people always say, well, of course, I want to sell it everywhere. In a perfect world, this would be the ideal scenario, but it requires many steps to achieve that goal. Let's look at some of the challenges. First is time. Without understanding what needs to be done on a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis, you can quickly become overwhelmed. Variables. Unlike other grocery chains, Whole Foods can do business differently in each region. Buyers don't always make product decisions the same way. If you have multiple SKUs, you may not get the same set approved that you had in the first region. Costs. Expenses like extra travel, more promotions, a new crew of salespeople, merchandisers, trade shows, not to mention internal cost increases from accounting, order processing, and on, all get unmanageable very quickly. And the next item is one of the biggest warnings I can give startup brands. Expanding to other regions quickly without full infrastructure in place to support the brand is a recipe for disaster. Just don't do it. I will be going into more detail on this in later chapters. Lastly, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Trying to expand to other regions without a strong showing in your first is very difficult to do. Not impossible, however, and therein lies the danger. Now let's look at some of the benefits of a regional startup scenario. Costs. A direct antithesis to the national model, costs are obviously going to be lower. Mistakes. Yes, you will make them, so why not limit the damage? Your resources can be concentrated until you have strong cash flow. Paying your dues goes a long way with Whole Foods buyers. Your business model will be refined to something that works. Duplication in other regions is fairly easy. And finally, success will allow you to leverage everything into powerful sales tools for expansion. Nothing speaks louder than facts. Really, the pros of starting regionally are so overwhelming it rarely makes sense to start nationally. There are exceptions, however, which we will go over shortly. In the end, I recommend to my clients to build a brand that is 1 inch wide and a mile deep before attempting to expand. So let's boil this down. Here are some final items to help you answer this all-important question. Ultimately, you must decide what makes sense for your brand. The following key points should be kept in mind no matter which path you take. It is critical to know how far you need to take the brand because each step of growth is costly and requires more layers of brand management. Knowing where your growth stopping point and/or selling point is can help you determine how you spend your resources getting there. And profit control is critical to your success. Rapid expansion is the #1 reason for profit problems. Running out of cash is game over. Keeping these points in mind, there are scenarios where a national launch is viable. Let's look at those now. Earlier I mentioned that there are exceptions to always going the regional route for a brand launch. Aside from the fact that you will need very deep pockets to do this, some scenarios could look like this. If you intend to hire a brand management service with all the connections to Whole Foods buyers, sales brokerages, distributor buyers, merchandisers, etc., you may be a candidate for a national brand launch. You need to understand that these connections will have to be paid for in the form of a monthly fee, which can average from $3,000 to $10,000 a month. Another exception might be that you're line extending, in which case you probably would not be reading this guide anyhow. However, it's good to know for future reference. Alright, some benefits to launching nationally would be speed to market. If you are concerned about the competition beating you to the marketplace, you may want to push for a national. There's great power in being first in class. Great sales. This one is pretty obvious. Just make sure your great sales aren't outweighed by your enormous costs. In fact, they will be bigger than enormous. Brand awareness across multiple demographics. Great if the consumer profiles hit are all your targets. Remember that a national launch requires national product approval. Very few products are approved for a national rollout in the first place, but if your brand management firm can pull it off, hold on tight. Now let's address the second tier of the business model matrix. The primary question you need to answer here is, where is the profit going to come from? This brand or another source? If this is your first or only business, then you will be pursuing what I call a strict business model. This means your business plan needs to take into account all expenses, marketing included, designed on profitability. It has to stand on its own merits with no outside help. Honestly, I believe this is the way to run every business. However, there are exceptions if you have very specific goals. Key concerns for a strict business model include correct suggested retail price levels and a thorough understanding of sales staff monitoring, motivation, and management. It is important to note that superior communication skills will also be required or hired in the form of a sales manager. Although rare, an example scenario of marketing-based business model might be if you're running a loss leader. In this case, you may be focused on maximizing exposure and not profit. Therefore, you may attempt to undercut the competition and maximize consumer trial. Another scenario would be if you were using the brand as a promotional vehicle to support another venture, such as a book you wrote or a diet program you sell. Another way to look at this is to ask yourself, do I intend to market this brand with any of the following? Internal Whole Foods promotions, consumer coupons, quarterly sales, or in-store product demonstrations? If you plan to use any of the above marketing tools, then I'm going to recommend a strict business model. In addition, even if you have your own marketing methods planned that don't include these techniques, Whole Foods buyers are going to want to know what they are. If they're not comfortable in the fact that you will be driving consumer demand to their stores, most likely your product will not be approved. So with all of this data, we should be honing in on the matrix choices for your brand. Let's look at an example of a completed matrix for a fictitious brand called Ben's Flapjacks. Ben wouldn't mind being famous, but money is more of a drive for him. He already has some retirement, but an extra $1 million wouldn't hurt. So money is his driving force. Ben has little or no experience in selling to Whole Foods, not to mention a limited budget, so a national launch is out of the question. This brand will be regional to start. Ben got started making great flapjacks for friends and family. They rave constantly and told him that he should sell them. He has no other related business, so this will be a strict business model. Since this is a strict business model, he creates the following marketing strategy. He has some talent in the kitchen, so in-store demos coupled with a promotion schedule for the first year seem to be the best tactic to start. He will have some custom aprons made with his logo for giveaways and produce coupons for his consumers. These will also act as sales tools for his broker reps. So now Ben has a basic plan, which is actually a lot more narrow than it was before he started his matrix. He knows what he's not going to do for sure. Already he has avoided some of the largest pitfalls brands fall into every day. So what did we learn? Well, let's continue with our sample brand. Because Ben is driven by money, we can now determine how much he really wants to bank before he can call his venture a success. This will allow us to create business plan models that will get him there in a specific time frame. Because Ben is starting a regional brand, he now knows he isn't going to need to fly all over the country and manage a ton of people. He can stay reasonably local, which will allow him to allocate more money to marketing his brand rather than wasting it on expenses. With a strict business model, Ben also knows he can't really undercut his competition because he needs the margin to fund his operation. So he will have to sell his product by proving it is superior to his competitors' brands and quality. Better taste would be an example here, rather than low price. These may seem to be simple insights. However, they make a huge difference in the approach you must take when managing and marketing for brand growth. Remember this, it's not how fast you can go, it's how fast you can keep going. Launching a brand is a marathon, not a sprint, and the sooner you understand this point, the better off you will be. So here are a few points to remember. It is imperative that you begin with the end in mind because in this business some mistakes are unrecoverable. The exercise we just did will lay the foundation for all your choices going forward. It will mold your decisions on SRP, distributor margins, marketing budgets, broker fees, and on and on. Knowing why you are doing this will determine if you have the stamina to finish the job, both monetarily and otherwise. Regardless of your final choices, this venture will take at least 5 years, so ask yourself, are you prepared for the long haul? As is the case with many complicated topics, the answers to the previous questions lead to more questions. If you are interested in furthering your knowledge, then I recommend subscribing to my YouTube channel. In later chapters, we will be covering the following topics in depth. Each chapter will guide you in asking important questions that will define your attack plan, control your budget, and generate the momentum your brand will need to grow and prosper. Each of the chapters have critical information in them. Not only will I warn you about pitfalls, but I will teach you how to position your brand so it's irresistible to buyers. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below to be notified as each of the chapters are released. Also, if you would like a personal guidance for your brand, I do offer private consulting and can be reached at info@takeflightsoftware.net. Thanks for watching. I hope I was able to help.